My name is Jennifer Haley, and I am the author of Neighborhood 3: Requisition of Doom. Neighborhood actually started out as a 10-minute play, and it was inspired by actually watching my brother, who was in high school at the time. He was deeply into Star Wars before it became a first-person shooter, and then he moved over to World of Warcraft, and he would just play this from the moment he got home from school till he went to bed, and he would play it all summer long. And what was interesting to me was the relationship between him and my mother, because my mother she'd go upstairs and she'd yell at him, and it's time to go to bed, and did you do your homework, and you've been on this game forever. But at the same time, for Christmas he got a high-speed gaming computer, and my mother would take food upstairs to him and put it in front of him, and then go back and clear away his dirty dishes. And there was just this weird, there's something really interesting about that. And so being a writer, I of course took that to the nth degree and wrote this 10-minute scene where this mother just keeps coming in and badgering this kid, cajoling and badgering, and you're getting the sense the whole time that what the kid is playing is actually sort of real, based on things that she's experiencing downstairs. And then interestingly, that was a 10-minute play on its own, and then I began a series of meditative dialogues between parents and children in a suburban neighborhood, and eventually those two things came together in one play. The initial draft I probably spent about 4 months on, maybe, and it was, in that draft, it wasn't necessarily just about video games. There were a lot of supernatural things going on in the neighborhood. There were werewolves and witches and exorcisms, and it was after the first read-through that what people were really hanging on to was the video game element, which was running through it. And so I kind of moved all of that stuff out except for the zombies. I held on to the zombies and I held on to the video game. The successive drafts up till the point of completion was probably about 3 years of work, non-consecutive. I'd write a draft, work on a draft for a couple months, put it down for a few months, pick it back up again. But from start to finish, about 3 years. I was living in Providence, Rhode Island when I started it, and I moved here about a year after starting Neighborhood 3, and I finished it here, and it was here that I found out that it was getting into the Humana Festival, which is kind of the festival that really opened it up to people in the country and got them interested in it. And that all happened out here, interestingly, in Los Angeles. I played World of Warcraft. I was on Blade Fist, and I started playing actually after I started writing this play. And before that, in college I played a little Dungeons and Dragons, and then I played Baldur's Gate with a boyfriend of mine for a while, when it was still, before any of this was online. I have to say the most maddening game I ever played was a game called Worms, and I would play it with my boyfriend, and we just had these two sets of worms that would bomb each other across this territory. They couldn't move to each other. They would just annihilate each other by sending rockets over. Or have you played Concrete Donkeys? And, well, if you haven't played Worms, I'd say go out and play Worms. But, when he would bomb my worms and win, I would just get, we got into major fights over it. So I got pretty emotionally involved in World of Warcraft, just in terms of being a hunter and having my pet. And I tamed this pet, this boar outside of, in Duratar, outside of Orgrimmar. And, I finally put the game down when I was about level 47, and I still had this boar with me. I would try to do other pets for a while, and I would really miss my boar. So I would really, miss my boar. So, talk about getting emotionally involved with a bunch of pixels. In terms of the development of the play, a lot of it was done before the first production, and it was done through development workshops and readings and stuff like that, which was very helpful. By the time I was working on the final drafts, it was sort of like putting together a mystery piece. It was only in the final drafts that the stories between the different families were interconnected. At one point, you couldn't draw any kind of connections between one family and another. And I decided to do it, like a good mystery story and bring all the elements together and set all the clues and pieces. Then honestly, I had a lot of help from, it was usually the ADs, the assistant directors on these processes and shows were often like a 21-year-old guy was always the AD. A 21-year-old gamer was always the AD. And any places where I wasn't really, conceptualizing the gaming world correctly, there was always this kid to be like, well, this would be, drink the chocolate milk and get the sugar rush, to help remind me what the different items are in the game. In terms of the productions, what's been fascinating about that is that every single production brings something. There are similarities between every production in terms of how much they're abstracting the set or the props or the audience experience. Those conversations are always the same and always very interesting for me to sit in on. A lot of the character stuff is similar, and then every production has its different, there's a slightly different take or a slightly different sweep. And with Jamie's production, I really enjoyed, he kind of put an intro on it, almost like you get, sometimes when you start up a new game, there's a whole video intro into the world. Even with World of Warcraft, once you pick your race, you have this whole, the trolls of Azeroth and blah, 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 blah. So Jamie created this whole intro into the piece using these just amazing cubes with lights and projections and choreography.